Hi there, today's scrapbooking tutorial hopefully is going to get you thinking about what you can do if you've got some gorgeous papers like these. I've made a fairly simple layout, but because of the beautiful papers it looks, I wouldn't like to call it fussy, because I hope that the way that I've treated the papers, it doesn't look overly fussy and you still focus on the photograph that I've chosen to be my main image. I've also hidden a second photograph behind my main image, and that's because I really do want these papers to speak for themselves. So I didn't want to cover up the pretty frame, I didn't want to cover up all those poppies, but I have got more photographs and I have got some journaling and some things of interest that I want to be able to use. So what am I going to do about it? So you may well come up with a similar problem if you've got gorgeous papers that you've been using. One of the things that I always do is if there's big pieces of paper to be saved, I will save them by gutting them out of the back of the papers that I'm using. And I'm going to show you today how to make a project lifestyle page. So I'm assuming that you've already made your feature page. I'm not going to show you how to do that here today, because it could be any feature page, and that you've been using pattern papers and some plain papers and you've got some cardstock left over. You're going to be using a Project Life plastic wallet, and I'm using this one here. It's got a long strip down one side and it's got a few more pockets to be able to add other little cards, either photographs or journaling spots, and a title, because I haven't got a title on my main page. Now, although I'll give you all the dimensions for the cards that I'm going to be creating, this isn't really about mimicking this exactly, although you're more than welcome to do so. If you happen to have these gorgeous poppy papers from Graphic 45 or the Mercurial Masterpiece paper, which is a beautiful frame, you're more than welcome to copy the layout that you saw originally. But this is more about getting you inspired to use up the scraps that you might have after you've done one layout, perhaps featuring one photograph, and get you thinking about how to include a few more photographs. And these cards are really fun to create. You know, you're creating little mini layouts and it is quite a fun thing to do, and I just wanted to share that with you here today. So first of all, you're going to look at your Project Life insert. So they're all laid out differently depending on which company they're from. This one's Simple Stories and it's hashtag 4051. So I've got a certain number of pockets, and depending on what you're using, so will you. So I've had a look at those and I've decided roughly how many photographs I want to use. Then I've gone back to my computer and I've printed them out in the correct sizes, and you'll see that because I decide to frame some of these up, they will change in size. So you roughly want them to be no bigger than your pocket size. So the pockets that I'm going to be filling with photographs are 4 by 6 inches and 3 by 4 inches, and I've printed out my photographs accordingly. So the next step I think is quite a good idea to do is just to pop things into pockets, and I can never find where the edge of these things are, inside or outside. So I spend a little while, as you'll see quite often in this video, working out which side that I can pop these little images into. And I like to just have a little bit of a play with the layout and see roughly what I'm going to be creating. And I think this top pocket I'm going to use for a title, and this side pocket I'm going to use for some journaling. Now, Project Life pages are originally designed so that you can scrapbook fairly quickly, and they suit, you know, a busy lifestyle. But now and again you want to do something a little bit more intricate, and this really you can do as simple or as intricate as you like. So I've started by getting sort of the bare bones of my layout into position, and I'm just cutting some pieces of cardstock to fit the pocket sizes. I'm going to start with the long side strip of this pocket page. So I've cut 2 pieces of cardstock. The black cardstock measures 2 inches by 12 inches, and then I've cut the poppy paper just slightly narrower because I want it to have a border down both of the edges. So I've just taken off 1/8 of an inch, so that's 12 inches by 1 7/8 of an inch, and I'm going to attach it centrally on the black cardstock. Now, I've noticed with these long side pockets that they are slightly longer than 12 inches, so I quite often find that I like to just make the design a little bit longer so they don't slip out of the side pockets. going to use that fact to my advantage, and I've cut 2 squares of black cardstock that measures 2 inches square, and then I've cut a further 2 squares of my pattern paper that I cut from the frame of my original layout. And I've cut 2 squares at 1 7/8 of an inch square, and as you can see I'm joining them together with double-sided tape, which I've put on the wrong side of the square, so I'll just quickly peel that off and start again. So let's try that again, putting the tape on the back of the pattern paper this time. And I think you can see here that because of the actual length of the pocket, it's made me make a decision about the papers that I'm using and how to lengthen this strip. And actually it's worked out quite well, because it's going to mimic my original layout quite nicely just by adding the second pattern paper to the bottom of the strip. So I'm going to use my pocket as a guide, just turning it this way so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to make sure that I don't stick these on too long. So I'm just putting a piece of tape at one end of the strip and the corresponding opposite side of the square, so that I don't end up with tape showing at the back of the strip where I don't want it. And then just lining everything up and just trimming off a little bit of excess where I've not quite got them exactly the same width. So just checking that it fits in the pocket, and now I can just add the second square to the end. I'm doing it in exactly the same way. Now these side strips could quite easily be used for journaling, or they could be used for a title. So there's lots of different ways to use these pockets, and I'm going to be working on creating a journaling spot next. Again, I'm starting with a piece of black cardstock, this time that measures 4 by 6 inches, and then I'm taking 1/4 inch off that measurement. So I'm cutting this at 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. So if you did want to keep it really simple, you could just have the red card matted on the black background, but I'm going to suggest that you add a little bit of decoration to your journaling card. So I'm going to use this piece of poppy paper, and I'm also going to add a strip of ribbon, a button, and a little bit of stitching, because I had some stitching around the frame of my original layout. So I've trimmed my poppy paper to 2 inches by 3 3/4 inches, and I'm just going to add that to the bottom of my journaling block. I like to attach my ribbons with some strong double-sided tape, and I've got this nice thin one here. One little tip, so that you can wrap your ribbon around the edges of whatever you may be attaching it to. I put my double-sided tape right across my card and leave a little bit on my craft mat at each side. Then I'm adding my ribbon, and that way the double-sided tape is there ready to just trim the ends of the ribbon and then fold the excess to neaten to the back of the cardstock. Now my ribbon was an elastic one, so it's a little bit bulky, and I intend to add this ribbon here, and I also intend to do a little bit of stitching. So I only have this little piece of thread left, so I'm going to half it into 2 lots of 3 strands. I'm not going to actually sew the button to the card, but I'm going to put a little cross of stitching in the centre of the button so it looks like I have. Just trimming off some of the tails of thread, and then I'm going to attach the button itself with some silicone glue once I've stitched the edge of the card. So I'm going to be using my Tim Holtz ruler to do this. This ruler is quite versatile. If you're looking for a good ruler, I definitely recommend this one by Ranger, and it's got a grid, so it makes it perfect for drawing borders and getting them all square and lined up, but it also has a little stitch line. So I'm just using a mat pin, and you just need to make sure that you hold your ruler very steady, and as you can see, I'm using the grid just to keep my line straight, and then I'm just creating some holes ready to do a running stitch all the way around the edge of the journaling card. So creating these little project life cards is all about mixing and matching what was on the original layout. And as I had some stitching on that layout, I'm also going to have some stitching on this little journaling card. And because I've got my stitching and the slightly bulkier ribbon on this little card, I am going to use a strong double-sided tape just to hold the journaling card to its black frame. And then for that final finishing touch, I had another button that matches the button that I used on my layout, and so I'm going to attach that here on this journaling card. And apart from the journaling, that's another card finished. I can't put it in the pocket just yet, but it's going to sit there. Next up, I'm going to do this central photograph. I wanted to double mount this photograph, and I had a little problem because I didn't have enough of the red cardstock left. So I've cut my photograph to measure 5 5/8 of an inch by 3 5/8 of an inch. I've cut my black card to measure 4 by 6 inches, and now I need to create a little red frame from some scraps of the red cardstock. So I've cut them to measure 1/2 an inch, and I'm going to show you a cheats way of making the most of a little piece of paper when you want to do some matting and layering. So I'm attaching my first card strip to the short edge of the photograph, and I'm trimming it so that there's a 1/16 of an inch showing all the way around. Then I'm slipping my scissors underneath the photograph and cutting the corner at an angle as if I'm mitering the corner of the paper strip. And then I'm going to repeat that process after a little tidy up. So again, another strip of double-sided tape on the opposite end of the photograph. And I'm just kind of using my graph mat just to keep things straight, and again leaving a 1/16 of an inch all the way around. This time I'm going straight for the mitre and just putting my scissors underneath, angle both those ends of the card strip. Then I'm ready to finish off my frame, and as you can see here, I still have a little bit more paper piecing to do because it's just not quite long enough, but I'm not going to let that deter me. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter so I don't have such a tiny piece at the end of my frame, and I'm just going to attach one piece of cardstock in position. Then I've got another strip ready to fill in that little gap at the end. So line everything up and then just trim so that it's level with the other side of the frame. So you can see how it's taking shape, and you can see how you can make a tiny piece of card go a little bit further. And it does happen quite often that you've just got a little bit of card left and you'd really quite like to do a job where you need a little bit more. So this is just an idea, a simple way to create a frame with a small piece of paper, and you'll never know the difference once it's mounted onto the black cardstock. So just finishing off that final strip and creating the red frame around my photograph. And then once it's in position on the black card, no one will ever know. Shh, don't tell anyone. And I think that's all I want to do for this central photograph. So I'm going to move on to the photograph at the top right hand side of this page. So starting with black cardstock that measures 4 by 6 inches, and then as I'm going to add some interest down the side of this photograph, I'm trimming it so that it measures 5 3/4 inches by 3 inches. So because this photograph allows me to take a little strip of it away without spoiling it, it happens to be comets swimming in the river, I can bring in this strip of pattern paper, which is the same as the one that was on the frame on my original layout. So if you're going to be doing a companion page like this, you're constantly looking at your original design, looking through your scraps of paper and seeing what little journaling cards you can make that will complement the original layout, and therefore the two pages will look great when they're displayed side by side in your photograph album. So using my frame as a guide, I've just put some double-sided tape down the side of my photograph and I'm attaching it to the patterned paper strip. I'm not actually attaching it to the black frame at this point because I want to add another strip of the ribbon that I used on the journaling card. So that's returned it to its original size, and now I'm ready to attach the ribbon as I did before. So I'm using strong double-sided tape and leaving that little tail at either end of my photograph, and then adding the ribbon and folding the excess ribbon onto the back of the photograph. And once again, because this is a little bit bulky, this ribbon, I'm going to be using the strong tape again to attach my photograph with the ribbon to the black card frame. So I'm going to leave that there as well for this photograph and add it to my little display. I think it's better to work this way, perhaps not try to take everything to the completely finished stage. That way you can add some elements right at the end that bring the whole design together. So I'm going to tackle these two photographs together, and they are in 3 by 4 inch pockets. You can see that I've cut them a little bit shorter already, and I told you I'm not very good at finding out the ins and outs of these pockets, and I've cut them slightly shorter because I intended to allow for a little bit of journaling at the top or the bottom of the photograph. So I'm starting by cutting my black frames to measure 3 by 4 inches. Then I'm trimming my photographs into squares, so 2 3/4 inch squares. And then I'm going to finish one off with a red journaling spot and one with a green, and I'm going to cut them to measure 2 3/4 inches wide by 1 inch. I really have enjoyed working with these little journaling cards because you really don't need much in the way of cardstock, and it's quite easy to sit and mix and match and change your design as you go along. So I could have my 2 journaling spots in the same place, but I've decided to have one at the top and one at the bottom. I definitely recommend all the time you're working to keep putting them back in the pockets so you can see how your design is taking shape. You think eventually I'll learn where the openings are on this project sheet, but you know, we'll see by the end of the video. So I've just got my title journaling block to do next. And this is where I'm starting to think of those final finishing touches. And as you can see, I've fussy cut some of the poppies from my page, as I did decoupage some of the poppies on my original layout. I think I'm going to cut out a few more poppies, and I keep looking at that button and wished that I had a couple more buttons that I could embellish things with. So I've got a little plan. A layout that I've done recently had a very, very small check, again another graphic 45 paper, and I think it's a pretty good match for this button. So I'm going to have a go at making some buttons of my own. So as you can see, it's a pretty good match, and I've got a 1/2 inch circle punch, and I'm going to cut 6 buttons ready to use on my layout. And I'm also cutting roughly a 1/4 inch strip of the paper to use on my 2 3 by 4 inch photographs. So I think these would look nice with a little strip of this gingham paper. It acts as a bit of a divider between the journaling and the photograph. So I'm going to use this strip, and I'm going to sort of make it into a faux ribbon. So going with my black border theme that's running throughout the page, I'm going to stick that onto a little piece of black cardstock and trim it so that it's got a narrow border of black on either side of the gingham strip. And I think that combined with a faux button will finish off both of those little photo cards. So I'm just joining everything together with double-sided tape. You've got a little bit of leeway as far as embellishments are concerned in these pockets, but you can't have anything too bulky. If you did want to attach something that was really bulky, you could always attach it to the outside of the pocket. For instance, if you had a particularly fluffy flower to add to one of the cards, you could actually add it onto the outside of the pocket. It wouldn't be too much of a problem. So to begin with, taking your 1/2 inch circles, you're going to use a matte pin or a needle or a pokey tool, and you're going to create the 4 holes that are in the centre of your button. So because this is paper, make sure that they're not too close together, or when you come to stitch them, you'll just pull them into one big hole. So I'm going to use one button to mark another so that I've got all 6 buttons with the 4 holes in the centres. Then once you have the little holes in the centres of your buttons, you're ready to begin stitching them exactly like you would on a real button, except you're just going to be a little bit careful not to pull your cotton too hard, otherwise you'll pull one hole into another. But just tie them off in the same way on the back of the button and trim the ends of the threads. And for the final step, you're going to need a ball embossing tool and a piece of foam like you see I'm using here, and you're just going to gently run that embossing tool around the inside of the button, roughly about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch around the edge of the circle, and that will gradually give it a cupped shape so that when it's on your page it's going to look like a button. It's going to look thick like a button rather than a piece of paper, because you're giving it a little bit of depth by running the embossing tool around the edge. And then it's just a case of trimming a piece of foam pad to size. So I'm just cutting a little square of foam pad. I'm going to attach that to the centre of my button. And then I'm ready to attach it to one of my little journaling cards. And I've decided I want to finish off this photograph like I did the journaling card below, and I'm going to put my little button in place on this ribbon. So I think you'll agree that from a distance this paper button looks quite realistic, and it's a fun thing that you can use. You can use it for flower centres if you haven't quite got the button to match. You can use some of the papers that you're using to create faux buttons for other projects that you might have on the go. I'm also adding 2 buttons to this poppy strip and a further 2 buttons to the little photographs at the bottom. And I'm almost done. This really does come together pretty quickly, and I'm just creating my title, and I've cut out the letters with my Cricut using the papers that I've been playing with for this little layout. So I've mixed and matched the frame paper and the red paper to create my title Pretty Poppies. You could think about using stickers or die cut letters, or you could use your stamps to create titles. You could even print these out onto or with your computer and then decorate them up. So I'm going to decorate this title block with a couple of fussy cut poppies, and I'm just adding them now and just layering them up with some foam pads, and I think they make a nice finishing touch for this little title journaling card. And then I'm going to again mount that onto the black. And as I already had a few more of the poppies, I'm going to add another 2 to this journaling card. So I'm sorry I can't quite get both of these pages into shot, but I think that you get the picture of how my companion Project Life page will look with my original layout. It really is a great way to add a few more photographs of a lovely day to your scrapbook. Well, I hope I've given you some food for thought, although I'm not a project lifer, because I really like all the fuss and palaver that goes into making a page like this. I think I will make more companion pages in the Project Life style, because I enjoyed making all the little cards and making or giving myself the opportunity to include more photographs without having to hide them away to keep a page like this simple. I say simple, I wanted to be able to show off both those beautiful papers as well as my photograph, and now I can add more photographs and more journaling, and I hope that it's given you some food for thought. So if you've enjoyed this little inspiration video, please feel free to subscribe or to share it with your friends, and I look forward to sharing some more creativity with you soon. There'll be a link at the end of this video to another project that uses, or another idea for using up scraps that you may have left over at the end of the layout. Till next time, thank you for watching.